Thank you, Ashley, Joe, Cheryl. And I want to send a special shout out to Mary Taylor, one of our own today. She's down in Houston and she said, I want to be watching you guys. So we miss you too, Mary. Come back home soon. She's doing some Red Cross training down in Texas. And so that's wonderful. So welcome to all of those of you who are joining us online, wherever you might be this morning. You know, we are on this journey about the universal Christ, and it's a very fascinating and interesting journey. And we began by kind of setting the stage by having our discussion last month on the Apostle Paul and some of his ideas and concepts about what he would call the Christ or the Christ mind. Because my point was this. When we talk about the universal Christ, some people say, well, that's never been in Christianity. I don't know what you're talking about. This isn't real stuff. And yet, if you read the Apostle Paul, you say that very much it is a stream of Christianity that has gone through, and the challenge that we have, it has been so interwoven into a message of the salvific message, or in other words, Jesus died to save us from our sins, that it's almost impossible to separate the two. And yet, we're kind of looking at how Paul's idea and concept of this Christ mind, now looking at it from our perspective, really, from our language base, from how we've grown in consciousness since the time of Paul, and giving it that the very same idea and awareness, only we're expanding it, because all consciousness is expansion, if nothing else. Well, one of the things that was said in the book, The Universal Christ, as well as the broadcast that we're watching, was back to this idea of the divine blueprint. And I thought that is such a perfect place to start. When we're struggling with learning and understanding about the Christ within, the universal Christ, we must first and foremost let go of Jesus. We have to get Jesus out of the equation, because until we get Jesus out of the equation, we cannot understand the concepts and the principles that predate him. Okay? So this idea of the universal Christ and this blueprint is how everything is created, how everything evolves. That's what I love about this. From dream to vision to concept to concrete. That's the way a blueprint is created. So let's use the analogy of building a house. Many of you have built your own house, remodeled a house. And, you know, sometimes when we're kids, maybe our parents had built a house. And we said, you know, when I grow up, I want to build my own house, just like Mom and Dad did. It's something that I just always was a part of me. It's a dream. It's just floating here. It has no particulars, it has no concept, it has no money, it has no anything. But as we grow older, a little bit older, we begin to go to people's houses and go, I like the way your house is laid out. Oh, no, I don't want a two-story. Maybe a split level would work for me. And slowly but surely, we begin to move from just the dream, sort of the unformed, or as the Bible calls it, the void and the darkness of the waters. We begin to move into a vision where we say, you know what? Okay, here's what I want. I want it to be a ranch-style house. I want it to be 2,500 square feet. I want 3 bedrooms. We start getting particulars onto our dream. Becomes vision. Vision then becomes a concept when we sit down with an architect and we say, this is what I want, draw me a blueprint. And the architect sits down and draws a blueprint. Now, the thing about a blueprint, there's lots of interesting analogies here about the blueprint. It's that really the blueprint is perfect, right? The blueprint is an absolute perfect representation of the house that you want to build. And then you go, I want the garage a little smaller. No, wait. Move that. And it doesn't hurt the architect's feelings when they say, oh, we'll take out that wall, put a little white out on it, we'll move the garage over here. It may cost you a lot of money to change your mind several times, but the idea is it's just a piece of paper. And the end result, when you finally say, this is it, it's perfect. It has taken dream energy, brought it into vision. Now it becomes sort of clarified and solidified. And now that concept, my house, is going to become concrete. Now, when you're sitting there with the home builder, is it the blueprint they sell you? Look at this blueprint. God, what beautiful blue. I mean, look at the lines. Oh, that's supposed to be a shrub. Don't you love it? And you're like, it's just a blueprint. That's not how they sell you the house, is it? They say, why don't you go over to our model home? And you'll see it all decorated up. And you know, if you like the sink on the left, we can make the sink on the right if you want to change it around. But you go over, or you look at some of our others, and you know this would look great in blue or green, and go to pick out this and that and the other thing. And you're all of a sudden, what was absolutely perfect on paper becomes the most interesting challenge of your life. Those of you who have built a house, you know. Now, Patrick and I remodeled the kitchen. That was as much as our marriage could stand. And I remember the night Patrick said, we have to go. We went out to dinner, and he said, we have to go and pick out new fixtures for the sink. So I said, oh, this will be fun. Oh, honey, what a nice date night. So down to Home Depot we go. And I will never forget walking into Home Depot and looking at this wall of sink fixtures. Brush nickel, polish nickel, brush gold, polish gold, brush bath, polish grass. And the two of us, it was such a characteristic moment. The two of us were looking at each other like, and this guy comes over to help us. Can we help you? I don't think so. Because you don't even know where to start, right? Overwhelming thing to bring that concept into concrete. And that's why you hire people to help you with that kind of stuff. Because it is sort of this, you know, creation is messy. This is something we don't seem to understand very well. That creation is messy. When you start creating anything, I don't care if it's tonight's dinner or building a home on your own, there's going to be times when it never looks like the blueprint. How many of you follow a recipe to the T? No, you put in salt, you take it out, you do. The blueprint still remains the same. But the way it comes out is the part of creation. And folks, this happens in every kind of creative process. I don't care whether it is your own life, all the way to something that you are creating, a painting, a music, a book, a poem. It doesn't matter, the expression of it into the world. There is this blueprint that is perfect, and nothing can take away from it. But it is only the blueprint. And its manifestation then is creation itself. So when we look at the book of Genesis, for example, all it is God's creation of the blueprint. Out of the void and the formless, out of this idea, of this dream, there becomes a vision of creation. Creation begins to be a blueprint. And this blueprint is perfect and whole and complete. It isn't like God is sitting up there with a little architect slide and trying to do it, but we have to understand or use images and analogies that will help us. Creation was created complete. We're going to get to this in a minute because some people don't think so. So the perfect pattern of tree, the perfect pattern of mountain, of planets, of things, and ultimately of human beings, is all a part of this perfect blueprint. It all goes together, and it all works together. Just as if you went and you bought a blueprint for your home and you said, I want a $250,000 house, but just give me the blueprint for the kitchen. The architect would say, well, wait a minute, how's the rest of it going to go together? He said, well, I'll figure that out. yeah, you'll figure it out all right, and it'll cost you $1 million to put the house together, right? You need a plan. So God has this great plan, this perfect pattern in which we are all a part. Let me say it again. We are all a part. We are the perfect form. We are the perfect pattern. And that's what the universal Christ is talking about. Because you see, what has happened over the course of time, when we get to the sixth step of creation, God created all things, God created humanity in its image and likeness, we go, but we're different. We draw a line, we go, well, but we're different. We're apart from creation. We are not a part of creation. So as long as we're apart from creation, then we can hurt creation. We cannot trust creation. We don't trust it in our own lives. We don't trust it in the world. We don't trust it in ourselves because we fail to understand that the perfect pattern still exists. It still is there. And I think it challenges us because we've become so absorbed in putting ourselves apart from the divine blueprint that we don't understand the essential point. We are created whole, perfect, and complete. You are not missing something. You are not apart from God's good graces. But unfortunately and sadly, much of religious tradition says you're a sinner, you're apart, you're not good enough, and you're not worthy enough. How is that possible? It isn't possible because the blueprint is complete and whole and holy. We are one little piece in the divine great puzzle that all works together, as Paul says, for good. That's all it is good. And somehow we have come to believe that we step out of creation. And we're really challenged, and I think this is true of probably all of us, really, really challenged to see the damage that has done to us. That's a lot of damage because we think we can't make it. We're not good enough. We're not worthy enough. We're not talented enough. We don't have enough, whatever enough might be. Rather than going back to this primal energy, because then the question is, what is that primal energy? Last Tuesday, I guess it was, right before we finished up with the Universal Christ series that we were watching, one of the people that were there said to me, you know, all that Reverend Jackie Lewis was talking about was really love. And he says, you know, I struggle with that. And so he turned to me and he said, what's your definition of love? And I said, it's the great attracting principle of the universe. And I could tell by the look on his face, he needed me to repeat it a lot. What? It's the great attracting principle of the universe. And he kind of shook his head like, I don't get that. So it made me consider, I thought, well, now, Marianne, wait a minute. Let's go home and kind of ponder this. What is love? What is the essence of this love? So last night, as I was reading Richard, he said what I said. I'm so thrilled. Richard says this about love. Love, which we might be called the attraction of all things toward all things, is a universal language, an underlying energy that keeps showing itself despite our best efforts to resist it. Love is the great attracting principle. Love is the movement and the energy and the flow. He said we all know positive flow when we see it. And we all know resistance and coldness when we feel it. All the rest are mere labels. So this divine blueprint, so we come from dream to vision to concept to concrete. What is it woven together with? It is woven together with the great attracting principle, which is love. This is love beyond feeling. This is love beyond thought. It's energy. It's consciousness. It's movement. What binds the universe together? How do we know that the planets are going to be where the planets are supposed to be? What holds them together? There's no string up there. There's not even any gravity up there. It's the great attracting principle that holds it together. It's energy. It's consciousness. He goes on to say, love is a paradox. It often involves making a clear choice, but at its heart, it is not a matter of mind or willpower, but a flow of energy, willingly allowed and exchanged without requiring payment in return. That is a big deal. The energy of God does not require payment in return. It binds us all together. It holds us all together from the very foundations of the vision and the image of this great moment when God said, let there be love, let there be energy, let there be flow that holds and binds it all together. We are all intimately woven with one another and all of creation. We can see the blueprint. We can see the perfect pattern. And then as the perfect pattern moves from concept to concrete, it is how we live our lives from the perspective that we're still connected to that flow, that we're still connected to that love. And we all know that's difficult to do because our humanness sort of says, no, wait a minute, I don't know that I totally believe that. And yet we feel it. Don't we? We feel when people love us. And I'm not necessarily talking about, oh, they love us and they're buying us hearts and flowers. When people like us, have you ever had the situation happen to you? And I'm sure you have. You're at a party, event, a class, or something, and you don't know the person sitting next to you. But you kind of have good vibes about them. You don't know why. You never even breathe in their space. And I remember when I first got into Unity, I took this class and I was sitting next to this woman named Nancy. And I didn't know her. Come to find out, as we started to talk, we both worked for Wells Fargo. We both were unemployed. We both were going through this program and didn't know why we got involved. Why we got involved is to 30 years later still be friends. Who knew? Because there's the great attracting principle. The great attracting principle. He says, not only is love a flow, not only is it an energy, not only does it not require payment. You know, isn't that an interesting thing? How often we give with a hook. I want you to like me so I'll love you. I want to please you so you'll think good of me. And our relationships get icky and messy because we always want something in return. Sometimes we don't even know that we want it in return. And yet, we hold each other sort of our emotions hostage. Until you love me, I'm not going to give to you. It's a very difficult thing to say, you know what, am I in the flow with you? Am I just giving without that hook? It is so very difficult for us to do. He says, love is constantly creating future possibilities for the good of all concerned, even and especially when things go wrong. Remember I said creation is messy? Creation is always messy because we're in there messing with it. We're in there taking that great blueprint and we said, you know, I think I'll tweak it this way and I'll tweak it this way. And so especially when things go wrong, love allows and accommodates everything in human experience, both the good and the bad, and nothing else can really do this. Now think about that. When you love someone and they hurt you, when you hurt someone you love, how does it all right itself back up? He says, nothing can work like love works. Love flows unstoppably downward around every obstacle like water. Love and water seek not the higher place, but always the lower. That's why forgiveness is often the most powerful display of love in action. Right? Because when we are in the place of anger and hurt and pain, when we can truly come into this energy of forgiveness, what happens? The floodgates open. We're back in the flow. We're back in the energy. We're back in the feeling that the blueprint has held all along. It is not for some, my friends. You know, those people have more of it than I do. That is not true. And we must struggle to remind ourselves, because there's this little voice inside of us, the big me and the small me, as we used to call it. The little me wants to say, not you, you're the exception. No, you're not good enough. You're not worthy enough. Look at all the bad things you've done. And it hammers us. And we really have to struggle with saying, that is not the truth of the blueprint called me. I am in the flow. I am in the energy. Yesterday, we looked at a passage in Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 5, where it was talking about the gifts of spirit. The gifts of spirit are joy, loving kindness, peace, patience, understanding, the gifts of spirit. And the author wrote this, and it just really, really struck me. She said, you know, for years I always thought of the gifts of spirit sort of like the canned fruit that you get at Christmas time. God's going to send me the gift of spirit. So when I'm upset or I'm struggling to forgive somebody, God's going to, FedEx me by 10 a.m. tomorrow, you can have the gift of love. And she said, I don't know why I had that concept, but I always did. And she said, all of a sudden, I got it, that the gift of spirit is the energy. The gift of spirit is when I feel inside me something move, and I say, I'm sorry. I didn't do the right thing here. Please forgive me. Or, I forgive you. What is that shift? What is that energy that all of a sudden comes? Or the times when you think, God, I just cannot make it. This is just too difficult. We're not going to get a package. We're going to get energy. We're going to get the energy of patience. We're going to get the energy of love. We're going to get the energy of loving kindness. We're going to get the energy that flows through us. And where does that energy come from? If not, it is the visible representation of the energy of love that surpasses our ability to think or feel about it. That flow that we know all the time, constantly. You see, to me, this is the great mystery of Christ. We call the title of today's sermon, the Christ mystery. What is the Christ mystery? The Christ mystery is the love from which we are created is for all of creation, and it is for us too. It is the love we were created from. It is the love we live into. It is one thing that I hear over and over and over again, to the point where I think, I'd be paying more attention. But when people are making a passing and a transition from this world, the one thing they tell me, Marianne, it was all about love. No one ever said it was all about peace. No one ever said it was all about forgiveness. No one ever said it's over and done with. Unilaterally, across the board, they have all said, Marianne, it's all about love. So if it's all about love, doesn't it behoove us to ask ourselves the questions, where does the love not flow? Where does the attraction stop? Because it's in the places where we don't resonate with people. It's in the places where we struggle with people or events and circumstances in our lives that we've put a stop to the flow of love. It is probably, it is our greatest challenge, because it's our greatest gift. Our greatest gift is to know that we are loved beyond all measure. Not because God said, oh, you're warm and fuzzy and I like you. It's because it is the very vibrational quality that is in every cell of your being. And when you resonate with that vibration, all of nature vibrates with that same. All of every concept of the blueprint itself vibrates with dynamic life. And this is what Jesus came to tell us about. This what he, it's the vision, it's the prophets all over again saying, I got it. It might be instantaneous and I might not be able to hold it very long. But the more I see it, the more I hold it, the more I experience it, the more I can live into it. The gift of love is our gift, to be a manifestation and an awareness of the great divine blueprint. We were created perfect and whole and complete. And even though creation gets a little messy, the way it outpours in outpictures in our life, it's always about coming back and reminding ourselves that we have the grace of that energy. We have the grace of that love to see us through every difficulty, every circumstance, because the Christ mystery lives as the mystery within us. Thank you for joining me today, and God bless.